really work well for me today. But if I'm a machine intelligence 1,000 times smarter, it may be a very different world. So I'm not trying to kind of find a scapegoat out of the three laws, because I firmly believe in them today. But I do think that there is a possibility in the future that perhaps, should we have, for example, the mind of some omnipotent entity, it may not include such that maybe value, maybe the three laws switch. Maybe, preserving value is the perfect first law, and even above self, or something like that. Or maybe the self is so intermixed that it's always one and the same. So it gets into kind of a deeper, I don't want to go say Buddhist, but I've been a big student of Buddhism for a long time. It gets into a deeper kind of Buddhist state where maybe that is the case. But again, you're talking about ideas that I don't necessarily, that become science fiction to me, whereas I have tried to, at least in my book, remain in the near term, where these are things that make a difference to me right now.
Well, I have a 6-year-old daughter, and I can say unequivocally that I would die for her. So your rules do not apply to me, because my life is not as important as hers. So to me, it seems very strange to think from the perspective of my life is more important than anything or anyone. Yeah. So that's the only reason I've been having problems with this, is because her life is so much more important than mine that I wouldn't hesitate to sacrifice myself if it came to that. So I thank you for humoring me on answering all these questions, and I hope that you haven't felt like you're being attacked. To me, it seems more like a very incendiary topic, but you knew that. I mean, I've seen you in discussions with others, and it's something that hopefully that you're putting a lot of thought into, and apparently you are. It's present in your mind, and I'm glad that you're considering the moral ramifications of what you're advocating. So thank you for having this discussion with us.
No, absolutely, and your questions are awesome. I got to be honest. Like, I love it when someone asks me difficult questions, because it helps me to go through them again, and it's nice to see face to face to discuss them, because, as I tried to just say, it's not that my philosophy is evolving, but I do believe as technology evolves, the philosophy will have to evolve, and it brings up different things that we all must consider. And as Jethro says at the very end of the book, that if Jethro has a religion, his religion is asking the question why. And so even if you establish the three laws of transhumanism, I think Jethro would always still ask why, and constantly reconsider those laws and make sure that they really do apply to him.
And as skeptics, that's all we can do, right?
Perfect.
All right, thank you for coming.
Zol, do you have I'm sorry to take any more of your time, but do you have, I think Negation has one more little question to ask you. Is that fine? Or
Sure, go ahead.
Go wish you off and promote the book and everything.
Zoltan, you kind of touched on it. Matthew reminded me when I was reading, on the three laws, it does seem that if you would just switch the basically take the third law and make it first, and the first law and make it third, that would take a lot of the I guess problems that it seems like a lot of the people have. And again, you saying that you're willing to reformulate and relook at it, that definitely makes it makes it easier to stomach, so to speak. Do you think that reformulating it that way would kind of take away from the book? And I mean, I know that a lot of the book is built around how Jethro is so interesting. So I don't want to ramble too much, but what do you think about reformulating the three laws that way? Kind of more they would reflect more of Asimov's laws than self-preservation laws.
Sure. No, and you may have heard me speaking a little bit about the sequel, and I'll just let you know a little bit about what I intend. I would intend for Zoe to be brought back, but at some point, I think Zoe, who has much more of the perspective that most people have, and a kind of a humanist perspective, would end up finding something wrong with Jethro, because he's perhaps incapable of love, which I think most human beings feel is perhaps the most, as Matthew said about dying for one's child. And I think that would be a conflict that I really want to explore. But the conflict would be very, very different to me if, in the future, when Zoe's brought back, you didn't have to worry about death. Then, all of a sudden, you might find, Jethro returning to a humanitarian type of perspective, where he concentrates much more on value. I think one of the biggest problems right now that I have is I feel like society has made it so that I must die and Jethro must die. And so what's needed right now is a warmonger who can achieve the goal of getting the planet into a perspective where it spends its resources and time on trying to overcome this absolutely massive problem that we all face, and that all our loved ones face. Just as much my daughter, my 3-year-old daughter, dying too. That's a massive problem. And if we didn't have to worry about that, I can assure you the book would have been very, very different. The problem here is that I'm writing it from a man who has, watched people die, parents and stuff like that, and I simply am finding myself not willing to accept how society has gone around trying to say, well, the deathist attitude is okay. This is how life is, and I actually just don't accept that. And I think Jethro himself might become a much nicer human being or a nicer entity had he not have to worry about himself going into a state of complete non-existence and then everything not really having any more value to him. So, again, I think there's a lot of context involved in the 3 laws of transhumanism. And the first and most important one is that since we're going to die, those laws were established.
Yeah. Again, I mean, if the first law was, again, reading, I mean, it does remind me a lot of Asimov and the laws of robotics. And if you were to move that first one to where your self-preservation was contingent on making sure that the other 2 laws were fulfilled, it seems that, especially like you said, you brought up Zoe. She would definitely, with her philosophy, be a lot more on board with that. And I guess that the real at the core of the question is as far as most, and I know this is a horrible question, most transhumanists, as far as the 3 laws go, do you think they follow those in that order, or do you think they're more fluid, like you were talking about before, that they may be rewritten?
Yeah, no, I think they're more fluid and they would be rewritten. I think most transhumanists are humanists deep down inside. Very nice people, I must say. And,
yeah, and to be honest, I mean, I definitely feel that from you. I feel that deep down you do feel you want to do what's best for humanity, and so I'm hoping that that's kind of where you're at. I'll put it that way. So.
No, and I do, and part of the reason that I wrote the 3 laws is one of my goals, and this is just kind of macro thinking, is that by creating a really far outside edge, especially for the transhumanist movement, the extreme has been put in. And I never expected that most people would go to that, because it's the kind of morality that doesn't necessarily fit on day-to-day living unless you really are some type of, I don't know, we live in a world, 2-car garage in the suburbs, drink wine at night. It doesn't really go that well with it. However, by establishing this outer edge, I think a lot of people have now said, well, okay, great. We have that boundary in place. We know what the farthest extreme is. Now we should choose where to go. And I think all movements actually need this boundary established. If you look in most historical revolutions and most historical movements, at some point, some extremist comes on and establishes that boundary. It's great because everyone says, wow, well, that's not where we want to be, or maybe we can touch that sometimes, or this or that. But one thing is for sure, it does help to put like a painted line on the road and say, wow, let's not cross that sign, because then we get into something very dark. And I was happy, I think, with my novel to have done that. And while I may believe in most its ideas quite strongly, I also respect and recognize the fact that I can never do this alone, and that what's best is that all of us kind of retain our freedoms and choose as kind of a collective unit the best way to move forward. And then that way we can all go down that path. I never expected the entire world to certainly agree with my ideas. In fact, I thought most people would not. but I thought it's very important for them to see them, to work through them, and to decide individually where they stand. And by doing so, they have already made steps towards, I think, a greater transhumanist mindset, which can only really be conducive towards the world. And so that was one of my main things as an artist, to try to do, as well as a philosopher, to try to help people, take a step, develop a stronger moral system, but not necessarily go all the way to where I am, but just to say, okay, yes, we can take some steps, and they're further than we've ever gone before, but it's not as far as that extreme painted line that we have in the road.
That's
Wow.
interesting, and you definitely accomplished that. I mean, I got to admit, that part of the book, or that I guess facet of the book, definitely gets your attention. And again, anybody watching, guys, it is a good read. It's fun. It is interesting, and it definitely makes you think. And highly recommend it. Go out and get it. It's another one of the books that you need to read.
Yeah, that's
So,
great. And just, I'm sorry, Ned. I thought you were done.
No, I'm
Right there.
done. Go ahead. And again, thank you, Zoltan.
Yeah, Zoltan, thank you very much for coming to the show. I'm a big advocate, and actually everybody's time's valuable, no doubt. And just to let you know, one of our viewers just purchased your book a little while ago from listening.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks to Midget. We know him here as Midget, and Midget, thank you very much. That's great. And Zoltan, he just thanked you, and that's great. But I want to promote your website here. It's transhumanistwager.com. And Zoltan, before we get out of here, how would one purchase your book? Where would be the best place to purchase your novel?
So the very best place to purchase it is on Amazon. So just go to Amazon.com and type in the Transhumanist Wager, and there's a Kindle version, and there's also a paperback version, and whichever one you choose is fine, and they're both the same. And hopefully you'll enjoy reading it. And it's definitely there's a lot of reviews out there now too. So I think reading the reviews is I've heard reading the reviews is pretty fun. There's a huge amount of terrible 1 stars, and there's also quite a lot of 5 stars. So it's interesting reading those.
That's great. That's great to hear, because I think it just opens your mind up a little bit to start questioning everything. That's what we're about here, just question everything. And I think you actually you put that into play with your novel, no doubt. And again, thank you very much, sir, for coming to the show. We loved having you on.